about to listen to the Dr. Daliah Show. Sassy, stimulating medical talk radio. Any medical advice Dr. Daliah Wax gives on her show should not be substituted for an actual visit to your medical provider. And now, here's Dr. Daliah.
All right, we are back on the Dr. Daliah Show. Welcome back to the show, 1-877-Dr. 1-877-DOCDALI. So it's really, really hard to hear stories of people who were hostages, such as those taken by Hamas, dragged into Gaza, raped, tortured, for those who survived, those who were raped and killed, obviously, no longer in Gaza, although bodies are still there that the families want. And so when you hear the stories of what their captivity was like and those who were freed, not easy to listen to. But this was very interesting. One of the freed Israeli hostages said that once, while he was there, once Trump got elected, the hostages treated him better. Now, they still didn't treat him good, but there was a definite change because he says, quote, Hamas was scared of Trump. So this is interesting. New York Post says that this freed Israeli hostages, Omer Shem Tov, 22 years old, said that his tormentors immediately treated him better once Trump was elected. Now, he claims that the terrorists really wanted Kamala Harris to win. That was fascinating. And he was there for about 500 days after he was kidnapped during the October 7th massacre in 2023 by Hamas on Israel. And he told CNN that as soon as Donald Trump was elected, they understood that he wants to bring the hostages back home. He says, so immediately the way they treated me changed. When Trump became president, the way they treated us changed for me personally. So they gave him more food. They stopped cursing at him, spitting at him. And he said, before we felt like nothing is happening. And I remember ever since he came into the role, they were very scared of him. They wanted Kamala to be chosen. Shem Tov was released with 5 others on February 22nd. This was more than a year after he was taken into captivity. And he lost 50 pounds. He relied on biscuits and salty water to survive. He said, I was being starved. There's no question about it. Captors kept telling him, we're going to shoot you if they heard Israeli forces nearby. So his biggest fear, he said his biggest fear was dying from Israel's military campaign, according to, CNN. And so he said, I believe every soldier is a hero. I really do believe it. And I think the army, they're doing an amazing job. But for us, he says, the scariest moments is the bombing. You feel like your life can be taken in any moment. So Shem Tov has spent his time advocating for the release of the other hostages who are still languishing in captivity. He and other former hostages met with Trump in March. So this is interesting because, you keep hearing peace through strength, peace through strength. Now, we want all the hostages home. And Trump had said, if the hostages don't come home, there's going to be hell to pay. Well, unlike the Obama red line, when you do a red line, you kind of want to show that it's not just talk. But even though the hell to pay didn't happen, people still fear what Trump could do. Why? Is he really that scary? Is he that volatile? Or is he, making, common sense assertions of what the situation is and saying, look, this is not going to last. This is not going to last on our watch. And so there is a ceasefire right now that I believe Israel has started. And I know the U.S. wants Israel to be very kitten-glovey while he's trying to, broker peace in the Middle East and do what he's doing. But I want all the hostages home. I am very, very grateful for any of the hostages released. I still want them all home. I can't sleep knowing that other people are being tortured and raped. But seeing that the Hamas terrorists had an immediate, once Trump was elected, that immediate change in attitude, and even him hearing them convey they wanted Kamala Harris to win, shows, It shows that people are watching. And people care, and they do believe that Trump has the ability to follow through on what he says. And I don't want anybody necessarily. I don't want the world being scared of a dictator or anything like that. But what I like about Trump is he isn't always in a basement or in Delaware. He's working. And he's calling out what's wrong. Anti-Semitism on campus, wrong. Why are we doing this? Spies coming in, posing as students. Not all international students. A lot of them are really good people, and we're glad they're here. But the fact that China has sent spies to infiltrate the students on these campuses, he's finally calling out the BS, the waste, fraud, the abuse. It's about time. And so once the truth is revealed, people are scared. Peace through strength doesn't necessarily have to mean military formations and showing your tanks, driving them up and down the street like they do in North Korea or in Russia. Peace through strength. Strength also includes knowledge. It includes having the guts or the chutzpah or the cojones to call it like it is. Also having public support. What really, really scared these other countries is that America wanted Trump. Now, maybe not all Americans. It was still, divided. But the fact that the majority of Americans wanted Trump, that scares them. Because that means Americans want somebody strong, want somebody lucid, want somebody who will say there's hell to pay if you have any of us, our Americans, let alone innocent hostages from our allies. We're not dinking around. We're not messing around. And so, I hope the remaining hostages are getting fed a little better and not given salt water and to eat. I hope they're not being raped. I hope they're not being tortured. And I hope they come home. But the peace through strength is a very, very generic concept that encompasses a strong military, making sure there's not vulnerabilities in the military, making sure there's not vulnerabilities in our national security, securing the border, being intelligent, and being on top of not playing dumb like, oh, okay, well, they're just being innocent. 1-877-DOC-DALIAH. Don't go away.
In a study, it was found that 33% of 44 herbal supplements had no trace of the advertised herb. Don't let that happen to you. Hi, this is Dr. Mitch. If you want to ensure quality, please go to TotalWellness.com. Supplements made for physicians only now available to you too. TotalWellness.com, helping you to look good, feel good, and enjoy total wellness.
Dr. Daliah here. Are you tired, burned out, gaining weight, succumbing to the daily pressures of life? Well, how's your dopamine doing? How you feel right now, how you'll feel an hour from now, and how you'll feel next week is completely reliant on your dopamine. Our daily motivation and willingness to push through challenges depends on the intricate chemical process dopamine provides. Christian Kalikas and I created Deploying Dopamine, a book that tells you what dopamine is, when it dysfunctions, and how to successfully deploy it when needed. Find Deploying Dopamine on Amazon today. Check it out.
Self-reliance. It's not a phrase we hear much in our culture these days. It might conjure up images of pioneers, the West, rifles, strapping men, and strong women. But what does it mean for us in today's world? The New American Magazine has just released its latest collector's edition, Self-Reliance, Foundation of Freedom. In it, the New American authors outline the necessity of self-reliance for a free people, tips for self-reliant living, and the importance of not giving up hope. This unique edition includes articles on the self-sufficiency of the founders, preparing for a worst-case scenario, firearms, financial self-reliance, the importance of community, and many other topics by expert writers. Now, for a limited time, the New American is offering a bundle of 3 collector's editions, Self-Reliance, The Great Reset, and Trump World, for just $19.95. Available at shopjbs.org. Visit shopjbs.org today.
All right. We are back on the Dr. Daliah Show. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877-Dr. Daliah, 1-877-DOCDALI. Big thanks to Talk Media Network for making the show happen. Big thanks to Daniel, our producer. And big thanks to you all for tuning in. We really do appreciate it. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter or X at Dr. Daliah, Facebook, The Dr. Daliah Show, and on YouTube, click like and subscribe. So, we haven't talked much about bird flu the last few months. Remember, animals were getting killed and cold, and chicken prices going up, and egg prices going up. So what's going on with bird flu? Well, we don't have a lot of animal numbers. The latest I'm getting from the CDC is dated May 23, 2025. The CDC is using their, surveillance. And according to national cases of humans, there have been 70 in the United States thus far, 1 death in the U.S. That happened, I believe, in January. Somebody had died of bird flu in January. And currently, of the 70 cases, 41 of those cases were from people who were exposed to cattle. 24 were working on poultry farms. There were a couple other animal exposures or the exposure source unknown. In terms of the numbers of animals, we have surveillance data from February 25th, 2024, 192,546 specimens tested that would have detected influenza A or other viruses. 6 were detected through the National Flu Surveillance, but they're saying how they, picked it up. So looking at animals, how many animals have it? Well, of the ones they tested, they say currently, and I believe this is as of this year, there's been 13,000 wild birds detected as of May 22nd. 51 jurisdictions with bird flu and wild birds. 173 million poultry affected as of yesterday. 51 jurisdictions with outbreaks in poultry, meaning I think all states and territories. 1,072 dairy herds affected. 17 states with outbreaks in dairy cows. Now, the data, whether it's going up or down, it appears we've been doing less culling, and we're not getting a lot of that data to see if, because people don't want to eat animals that have bird flu. On the other end, they've been killing healthy animals so they don't get the bird flu. And so there's been a lot of controversy over that. Why are we killing the animals? Why aren't we separating them, giving them a chance to live, testing them? And if they're negative, then we could use them for food. But if you're killing them, then they're already out and gone. Well, the argument is if we kill them off, then there's less hosts for the virus to jump to. But that's why, like I said, separate them then. We should be able to do some pretty, wasn't, the Biden administration advocating plexiglass and 6-foot distance stickers and masks? Now all of a sudden they're like, oh, no, we can't control it. We can't separate the two. Okay, well, then you should have listened to us the first time. Well, the Trump administration wanted to work on developing a flu vaccine. We're being told that has gotten canceled. There was a $766 million government grant awarded to Moderna. But the company said it was notified by the HHS department under RFK Jr. that the funds had been withdrawn. These were funds awarded by the Biden administration to develop and purchase this experimental shot. But the HHS withdrew the funds because they said that the project did not meet the scientific standards or safety expectations required to continue federal investment. They have a point. I mean, if it's not going to be an adequate study and a valid study and a study that can ensure safety for humans, then, safety in humans eating those animals that have the vaccine, do we really want to spend the $766 million? I would love to see a vaccine. I think coming up with a vaccine, for avian flu would be fantastic. The problem is the American public doesn't trust what's in these vaccines. And even though some of us think they'll be completely healthy and safe, many individuals do not want to eat food of animals who were vaccinated or given hormones. So, is this going to be something that is going to be practical? The new vaccine was going to be also an mRNA vaccine. It was called mRNA 1018. And it was the same technology that was used for the COVID-19 vaccine. And HHS boss Robert F. Kennedy Jr., according to Daily Mail, has expressed skepticism regarding the COVID vaccines. I don't know how he really feels about mRNA technology, but the H5N1 bird strain is still present. It's still, we just aren't getting a lot of data, or media isn't covering it because they all want to cover Trump. See, during the Biden administration, the media didn't want to cover Biden. So we got to hear about all these other things. Now that all everybody wants to do is cover Trump and criticize him, we're not getting all the other news we need. So, if the Trump administration, I know people are thinking that the Trump administration is anti-vaccine. They're not. Trust me, if the Trump administration could get credit for solving avian flu, they would do it. In fact, it was the Trump administration that started the production and incentivizing the production of COVID vaccines. Biden gets all the credit because he mandated it and was firing people who didn't want it. But it was Trump's administration that started it. So the Trump administration is not anti-vaccine. But if the company that is going to use taxpayer money to do a study is not going to have the study up to code, then it's contaminated. And the last thing our government needs is to promote something that the scientific community says, but wait a second, this doesn't hold true. This doesn't mean it's safe. This doesn't mean it works. And it's a little tricky when we give money to a company who ventures to gain by the success of it. When we were in medical school, anytime there was a scientific study that we would bring to Journal Club and talk about and deduce and tear apart and dissect, the first question any of our attendings asked us, or our superior officers asked us, was, who sponsored the study? And if the sponsor of the study ended up being somebody who could benefit from the study, it started to weigh less because it was more biased. Now, mind you, R&D from pharmaceutical companies do happen from grants. Most pharmaceutical companies would not be able to invest in these drugs if they didn't have money coming in. Because what if the study doesn't work out? What if it's a dud? What if it doesn't sell? Then they lost all that money. So this isn't anything new. But, people ask, why are we funding studies at Harvard and these other universities? Because we want to try to be more objective about who is doing the studies. Not that we're seeing a lot of objectivity from academia these days, but if we're going to, want a sort of technology used, and you have a company that can gain, aims to gain from it, they could very easily say, you see, it works, so buy our product. So we, there should be a vetting process. If Moderna comes back and says, look, this is how we can improve the validity and the scientific standards or safety expectations, they might then receive more money. Apparently, they got $176 million in July 2024, and we're supposed to get another $590 million that was approved by Biden in January. And it would have supported a late-stage clinical trial that could have determined the vaccine's efficacy against the viruses, a lot of them, including bird flu. The shot had been tested on 300 healthy adults to gauge its safety. And Moderna says they are very pleased by the robust immune response and safety profile observed in the interim analysis. So I'm not sure what triggered the HHS to say we're going to hold off on this. But we do have to figure out a plan. They say since 2022, more than 168 million poultry in the U.S. has been killed or lost to bird flu. We have not seen necessarily human-to-human transmission, but some humans have been exposed, as we said, by dairy cows or poultry. And the exposure has killed, I think, 2 so far. So we'll keep you posted on that. But hopefully we can get a vaccine soon, if done properly. 1-877-DOC-DALIAH.
At Hot Shot Secret, we share the science behind common diesel problems and their solutions. For example,
diesel fuel cetane levels.
in many states, the cetane rating in diesel fuel is 42 to 45. Most diesel engines operate more efficiently with a cetane rating of 48 to 50. One treatment of Hot Shot Secret Diesel Extreme will raise your cetane 7 points, increase fuel economy, and improve cold starts. Due to a cleaner burn, there are less hydrocarbons and particulate matter in your exhaust. This reduces the blockage of your diesel particulate filter. Using Diesel Extreme generates 83% less DPF regeneration. The 6-in-1 Diesel Extreme formula also includes the most concentrated detergent on the market, lubricity enhancer, water demulsifier, rust and corrosion inhibitors, and a fuel stabilizer.
Hot Shot Secret Diesel Extreme is available nationwide at truck stops, fine farm and auto stores, and online at hotshotsecret.com. Hot Shot Secret, powered by science.
All right, we are back on the Dr. Daliah Show. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877-DOC-DALI, 1-877-DOC-DALI. So one of our listeners says, or asks me, because I was in reality TV, how do I feel about the Todd and Julie Chrisley pardon? I have to be honest, I haven't really followed them. I never really watched their show. But I was a little shocked by the news that they got pardoned. But then once you start to read a little bit more of the details, you're like, oh, okay, so that's what happened. So President Trump has been a victim of very egregious prosecution, over sentencing. And so he has a soft place in his heart if he thinks that has happened to other individuals. And so Todd and Julie Chrisley were released from custody yesterday after they were pardoned by Trump following 2022 convictions for fraud and tax crimes. Todd was serving a 12-year prison sentence in Pensacola. His wife was sentenced to 7 years at a facility in Lexington, Kentucky. Now they're on their way back to Nashville, and their family is ecstatic. And I guess the Chrisley Knows Best was their show. They were sentenced for conspiracy to defraud banks out of more than $30 million, also found guilty of several tax crimes, including attempting to defraud the Internal Revenue Service. They said both had maintained their innocence and were in the process of appealing. But then Savannah Chrisley, their daughter, got a call from Trump saying that they were going to receive full pardons. Now, I don't know much about what they did and what happened in the court case, but they had an unsuccessful appeal last year. Their attorneys argued that the prosecution knowingly allowed for false testimony against the couple, and there was insufficient evidence to convict them. Judges of the 11th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals upheld their conviction, but ordered that Julie's case be sent back to lower court to be resentenced due to a calculation error. Now, I don't know much about their case, and you guys might know more. I don't follow a lot of reality TV since I did Pawn Star work, but there's a couple learning points from this. So apparently the Chrisleys were, I had no idea, but they were called the Trumps of the South. So they were they are very conservative. And so there were some beliefs that what would have maybe mounted to a couple years charge or room for parole or didn't in their case. And if that's the case, then yes, there's bias, there's malicious persecution, there's whatever else that the legal experts would say. But the one thing that I think we've all learned in the last few years, like what happened with Trump's trial, is I was always of the belief, and I'm naive, that if you, let's say, commit a crime, it's pretty standard what that crime is, if it's worth a slap on the wrist, if it's a misdemeanor, if it's a felony, and there's standards, and that those standards are equal. No, it's not. Some people are getting put in jail, for years. Other people are going to jail and getting killed. I mean, it's not a fair system. But one thing I'm seeing this to doctors. I'm seeing this happen in a variety of areas is once you open up Pandora's box or you wake up the sleeping giant, there's multiple charges you get. So like, for example, when I like to read the medical board's list of doctors who got censured and why. And I know the majority of doctors when you practice in Nevada long enough. And when you read about it, it's not just one single isolated charge or NRS statute they violated. Then multiple others get added on. So let's say you had a patient who didn't, follow up with the cardiologist, or you didn't refer them to the cardiologist in time. They end up having a heart attack. There's consequences of that. The charge might include poor record keeping, failure to follow the NRS statutes. I mean, it's not just one, shall we say, I don't want to use one the word conviction, but one charge, but it's multiple. And so, my advice is don't commit any crime. But in Trump's case where, he's telling a bank, this is what it's worth. This is what the real estate is worth. This is the appraisal. Here you go. You would think that would be enough to protect him. But we are seeing bias in court cases. And so you could be completely innocent and charged, or you could not be innocent, have done something that, probably would, give you either community service or a very low sentence. But because they say, but you also did this and you did this and you did this. So, you get arrested for something. You're like, no, I gotta get my purse. No, I gotta go tell my family. Now you resisted arrest. Now that's another charge. And so don't be in that position. Because if you think the only thing you're going to get busted for, like you see in these movies, they're like, what's the highest sentence? 10 years? That's all I'm going to get. That's not the way it works. Everything gets thrown at you. That's the art of law. Lawyers will look and say, but you see, you did this. Oh, but you did this. You did this. You did this. And these are all charges that way. And I think it's just like a negotiating for a used car. You try to go for the maximum, and then it gets whittled down to a lower, we're going to drop this charge, but so it's like there was some give and take. You're like, but those charges should have never existed. So I can't really comment on what happened with the Chrisleys and what they did. All I heard was there was fraud and tax crimes. I don't know the extent of it. I don't know how guilty they were or how innocent they were. But for Trump to pardon after his pardon czar, I forget who his pardon czar's name is, had suggested that this was a case he looks at. It kind of reminds us that we're not always going to have somebody around to pardon us, and we could be very maliciously prosecuted. We could be, we could think we're only getting in trouble for one thing and get in trouble for multiple others. which is why, don't do fraud, don't do crime. I think our biggest fear is being accused of something when we didn't do anything wrong, or somebody planting evidence or something. That's always been, and so, make sure you have, proper documentation. A lot of my family and friends are like, you post a lot on social media. And I do that because I'm worried about identity fraud. I'm worried about somebody saying I did something that I didn't elsewhere. And so, I let people know I'm in Maine, or I'm in Boston, or I'm in Colorado Springs. I know people say don't do that for safety issues, but if somebody is claiming that something was done or something happened, and here's my check-ins, here's my digital path or my digital roadmap, I do that as a way, to ensure if somebody does steal my identity, that wasn't me, because this is where I was. And it's not really the easiest way to live by, but these are the things that I think a lot of us have to think about. And it's frightening that our court system is not sane, it's not neutral, it's not fair. And we've had history after history throughout the decades of, depending on your race, your gender, your creed, your political beliefs, you getting the book thrown at you. That needs to stop. 1-877 Doc Daliah, don't go away. Dr. Daliah here. Are you tired, burned out, gaining weight, succumbing to the daily pressures of life? Well, how's your dopamine doing? How you feel right now, how you'll feel an hour from now, and how you'll feel next week is completely reliant on your dopamine. Our daily motivation and willingness to push through challenges depends on the intricate chemical process dopamine provides. Christian Kalikas and I created Deploying Dopamine, a book that tells you what dopamine is, when it dysfunctions, and how to successfully deploy it when needed. Find Deploying Dopamine on Amazon today. Check it out.
At Hot Shot Secret, we share the science behind common diesel problems and their solutions. For example,
Hot Shot Secret Stiction Eliminator.
Stiction, that sticky friction, undermines the performance of diesel engines. Third-party ASTM testing verifies that Stiction Eliminator removes 2 times as much stiction than any alternative on the retail shelf. Stiction Eliminator is formulated to be left in the engine oil. It works as you drive.
Available at truck stops, Tractor Supply, O'Reilly's Auto Parts, and online at HotShotSecret.com. Hot Shot Secret. Powered by science.
In a study, it was found that 33% of 44 herbal supplements had no trace of the advertised herb. Don't let that happen to you. Hi, this is Dr. Mitch. If you want to ensure quality, please go to TotalWellness.com. Supplements made for physicians, only now available to you too. TotalWellness.com, helping you to look good, feel good, and enjoy total wellness.
Carl Amari here to tell you about our newest website for old-time radio lovers. It's 100radioshows.com. At this site, there are 5 old-time radio shows waiting for you to download free as our gift to you, and be sure to browse the additional 700 old-time radio shows available to you for 70% off by using the promo code RADIO at checkout. This is a limited-time offer, so log on to 100radioshows.com. That's 100radioshows.com.
We are back on the Dr. Daliah Show. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877 Dr. Daliah, 1-877 DOCDALI. So this is something I want to talk about here. For those of us who are educators, and I've been an educator in various different capacities in my life, what did a failing score mean? If you gave an F, what did that mean? Did it mean you didn't like them? Did it mean you disagreed with their political beliefs? Does it mean you were biased against them? The F was supposed to be, and this is how I looked at it. I don't think I ever gave one F out. But if I did give an F, it would be because that person did not show the requirements or the competency to then move to the next lesson. So like if you have a test and you got an F on a test, if you failed it, you need to retake it, or it means you don't know the material. Because if you don't know that material, you won't be able to move on to the next, because most of everything builds on each other. History builds on itself. The math builds on itself. The language. So an F to me is temporary. It means you didn't satisfy what everybody is supposed to know at this level. Now, if the whole class fails, okay, there's something wrong with the teacher. And I've seen classes where, the majority of people were failing the test. That means that teacher wasn't teaching or they weren't testing appropriately. But if you get an F in medical school, you don't just go, all right, you got an F, bad day, move on. You need to learn that material. So an F is a calling. An F is, you didn't make it this time. So let's do it again, do it right, so you can move on. Now, it doesn't mean you have to lose a whole year of training. Maybe you do extra time after school. Maybe you get extra tutoring. But Fs are necessary. Maybe you could, if everybody is really worried, and wants to be woke, they could maybe use a different term, unsatisfactory or did not pass. You could do DNP. Yeah, but that's a doctor of nurse practitioner, so I don't know how many, I don't know how many abbreviations we want to do. But if you failed, that means that you didn't understand the concept, and you didn't make it to the next bracket that you need to make it to. Imagine if we didn't fail a hockey team. If the Carolina Hurricanes were told, "Oh, you didn't fail. It's okay. Everybody's going to have equitable grading." Nobody would ever advance to the Stanley Cup final. Congratulations, Florida Panthers, on that. My guess is they're going to be facing the Edmonton Oilers, just like last year. I like the Dallas Stars a lot, but somebody has to fail. Same thing in football. It just you can't have everybody just standing there in limbo. Nobody's going to improve. Nobody's going to get better. And if you did fail, no success comes without failure. You know how many times I had to fail or get a D or get dumped to figure out how to have a successful relationship, how to have a successful career? It's just things you have to do. So in San Francisco, there's a school district that wanted to move forward with a equity grading strategy called Grading for Equity. It was presented during the school board education meeting, and they wanted to offer professional development towards a standards-based grading. Under the proposed standards, how a student scores on the final exam, which can be taken multiple times, would be what counts towards their grade for the semester. Homework and weekly tests would not impact the grade, and neither would late assignments, tardiness to class, or absence from school. The letter grade system would be significantly altered, allowing students who score an 80 to receive an A, and students who score as low as a 21% to still pass with a D. Now, the new system was going to be tested in 14 different schools by 70 teachers, but there's been huge backlash with it. So here's my problem as an educator. If you're only getting 1 in 5 questions right, you're failing. Okay, that's not passing. And don't be giving a pass for a D. If you're skipping class, if you're not coming to class, well, then you're not learning the material. Now, you could show proficiency and certain competencies, remotely, but you have to do the work. You have to prove that it's your work. And so people get an F if they don't show up to class. That's how it's been, because if you don't show up to a job, you fail. The reason why kids are in school is to prepare for real life. You don't get a pass by doing crap work. Although I've seen some jobs where that's what people did, and they're the ones that keep their job, and because of politics. But and if you are only getting 21% of your job done, your ass is getting fired. That's just not. Can you imagine that in medical school? Imagine that in medicine. A surgeon only performs 21% of the surgery that needed to be done. Yeah, but I pass. No, you don't. Medicine, you got to be 100% all the time. Now, I do like the idea. As I said before, if somebody fails, they get opportunities to learn the material until they pass. You shouldn't advance until you get the concept down and can pass. That's the way it should be. Now, maybe the way we do our tests might have to be different. I mean, I've seen teachers test on, well, did you read my syllabus? If you didn't, you're going to fail the test. This isn't about your ego. All right. This is about, do the students understand what is needed to be able to go to the next math class or science class or medical class? And so, I don't mind schools. I don't really like the whole idea of the federal, government running all this. But if school districts can't run it, something has to come up and be standardized. And math should be taught and taught in a way that everybody can understand it. Now, we have a dearth of teachers. Now, I noticed in college, we had some real amazing scientists, very well published, but they couldn't teach worth crap. They couldn't teach. They would just read from a slide. Well, why don't you turn to the student and say, this is how you learn it. This is how I look at it. This might help you remember it. Help these students learn. But teachers are overwhelmed. Classes are overcrowded. Many students don't speak English. Our school system's a mess. So trying to say, look, we don't want parents getting mad. Let's just pass everybody to get them the hell out of that grade so we don't have overcrowding. That's not the answer. I told you I was playing blackjack a few years ago, and there were people counting on their fingers to figure out what their cards were. How do you not know a 7 and a 6 is a 13 or a 9 and a 5 is a 14? They're adding on their fingers. Or there was one lady who was like, blackjack, or to go 21. She puts her cards down. She had 22. Now, she could have been faking, hoping that the dealer couldn't add. But I'm like, you guys are adults and you can't add? And now that everybody's using their phones or Siri or whatever to do their calculations for them, we got some problems. So do I think if somebody's tardy or absent, that should count? Absolutely. If they can't pass, the final is supposed to be the comprehensive test of these are the metrics we need to know that you satisfied. And if they can't satisfy them, then they need to relearn it. That's common sense. 1-877 Doc Daliah, don't go away.
Did you know that healthy arteries make a gas? Yes, actually 3 known gases. Hi, I'm Dr. Mitch, and nitric oxide is a gas that's readily made all day long to keep our arteries open by relaxing the blood vessel walls. By doing this, our circulation is increased, bringing blood, oxygen, and nutrients to every part of your body. Both age and poor diet can lead to a loss of this precious gas, and in turn, blood pressure can go up, energy can go down, and you can get tingling in your hands and feet. Well, our product, Ultimate Nitric Oxide, can easily help fix this lack of nitric oxide. Go to TotalWellness.com. That's TotalWellness.com, where we are helping you to look good, feel good, and enjoy total wellness.